Hello, welcome to the show. This is the Get You Some Productions podcast, a music related podcast. We cover everything in the music industry from the first note to the last fan, everything in between. So, as long as we keep it positive, we really don't shy away from any music related subjects. And today I have Terence Boylan on the show. Terence is a musician from the 60s, let's say, who had some albums in the 60s. I think you were compared to, and I listened to your record, at least I listened to the Elias Boona record, and to me, actually was uh, sort of reminiscent of a lot of the psychedelic electric folk, um, stuff from the late '60s. I think the Blues Project was mentioned, and I'm familiar with the Blues Project. Similar stuff to that. Um,
Is the Alias Boona record the only one you listen to? Because the
yes.
next two are much more representative. The next three, actually.
Oh,
But
so yeah, the next one after that was. So I actually was a little tough finding them. So what I'd like to do is have save some links to them, and then I can share the links to which one do you think is the most representative?
oh, the first two Asylum records. When
So was that
when
yours?
you signed me, I was in the middle of I was working. Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I'll explain that. But
Yeah. So like I was saying before we started the show, um, this is well, actually, the way we know each other is we both are associated with Bard College. We both went there. You were on the board for a long time, and several other boards. You're telling me, and so we have a relation to the school. My partner and I, who can't make it today, we've become sort of unofficial archivists for Bard College. Lots of Bard related folks come on the show, and my job is to actually just let people tell their story in as
Rose.
much detail as we can because we just want to get it on. We just want to get it on tape. So, so why don't you start with? I did. So I read there are a couple of bios out there of you, and I think they said that you wrote your first song at 11 years old, something like that.
Hmm.
Do you mind telling us your what we like to call
No,
the
it's
superhero
one of
origin
those.
story?
Yeah, it's one of those quirks. It all started with a ukulele that I fished out of the trash when I was about 10, and it only had three strings. But I learned everything that you can play on a three-string ukulele, and I couldn't wait to get the fourth string. But when you're 9 or 10, it seems like a huge deal. Finally, my brother got me one, and that was a little baffling because I was so good on the three-string ukulele. But I was already writing songs, making up little ditties.
Mm.
And when I was, what this is an extravagance, $12. Can you imagine? I had to wash a lot of dishes. But when I got this, the action was so high that I kept going back to the ukulele. But finally, somebody showed me how to fix the bridge was set wrong, and suddenly the whole world just opened up. I could play this without my fingers bleeding. It sounded big, and I was taking the little ditties that I was writing on the ukulele and moving them over to the guitar, and they sounded cool. And of course, I immediately put together a band. I got two kids in my high school, to junior high, to play along with ourselves the preteens because we were all 12. And one of their fathers was one of the people involved in the Buffalo Bob radio show, which was by that point it was nationwide, so it was syndicated. It was a big deal. So he auditioned us, and he took us on, and I played one of the first songs that I wrote called "Playing Hard to Get," and we did that show, and suddenly it was amazing. We were sort of famous. I mean, the kids in school and stuff were saying, "Wow, I heard you on the radio, man." And that was a huge deal. So I got started young. I, I started singing at all the coffee houses in Buffalo, and it was a great music scene.
Hmm.
Buffalo and Toronto and Thunder Bay all had very popular, sort of famous clubs: the Limelight, the Lower Level, the Zuni, Bell Book and Candle, and people like Neil Young and Joni Mitchell and stuff were doing this circuit. In Buffalo, Hackett and Raven were big. A couple of luminaries came to town, the Kingston Trio, Peter, Paul, and Mary, and they would hang out with the scene because Buffalo was starting to be a thriving music scene. So I got more famous actually quite young than a lot, it did because I was headlining at folk clubs when I was 14 or 15.
You
And when I was 16, I went to the Newport Folk Festival, and there was a concert called the New Folks Concert for songwriters,
hmm
and Peter Pete Seeger, and Theodore Bickel were the judges of whether you got on or not. So I auditioned 2 songs, and they put me on the New Folks Concert right before Dylan.
Wow.
And I had met Dylan when I was 16 because we ran away to New York to meet him. And I kept hanging out at the Gaslight until I did. And he took me to Israel Young's Folklore Center, which was right next to the Gaslight and the Dougal Street. And he said, "Here's some." So he took a guitar off the wall and he handed it to me. And I played him 2 songs, and he said, "Hey, it's not bad, man." Then he took the guitar away from me and sang me a song that he had was half finished called "Hard Rain's Gonna Fall," and
Wow.
he then played another half of a love song that he was writing. This is really early. Dylan's first album had just come out.
Right.
The reason I had it was my brother worked in a record store and he ordered the wrong record, and the Dylan record showed up. So I opened it. We bought it for $2.99 or whatever. I took it home and started singing all the songs on it because I loved it. I thought it was
Yeah.
great.
Hmm.
So meeting him was a complete thrill. And I told him a little about. He invited me to go with him to meet some friends. And then I re-met him at the Newport Folk Festival, whereupon, when I was done with my set, he said, "Good going. Can I borrow your guitar and your capo? Because mine's won't stay in tune or something." So I thought, all right, this is 2 huge things. He's heard me sing my song, and now he's played my guitar. This is the greatest.
You still have that guitar?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing.
And, I also had the harmonica. So, if, a little backup if he needed that for any representative for Bard College. So I listened very carefully to what he was saying in case the headmaster came in and saw me ducking into the library. He'd say, "What are you doing here?" I'd say, "Oh, I'm listening about colleges." And
Wait, so we are still having a few little spotty spots with the internet connection.
okay,
Can you
where did I go wrong?
at the just when you finished about the harmonica? So
Oh,
I think you're getting
all right,
into
here's
how
what I'm
you
going to
got
do.
into Bard.
Here's what I'm going to do. Hang on, okay?
Yeah.
Uh, sure. Don't go away.
I'm here.
That's why that problem will. all right, there won't be any more trouble. That was
Okay.
Starlight. I just switched over to Frontier, so we'll be fine from now on.
Okay. I can't see
So
you anymore.
Dylan, I don't know how you. Dylan played my guitar, which was a huge thrill,
Right.
and he'd heard me sing a song. And then back to high school, where I cut out of chemistry class. I was always skipping classes to do crazy things, and I saw the headmaster coming down the hall straight toward me, and I knew. I think I had been given a warning: no more cuts, or you're out. So I ducked into the library, and there was a representative from Bard College there telling the seniors all about Bard. So I said, I've got to pay strict attention to this in case this headmaster comes in, yanks me out, and asks me what I'm doing. So I could tell him I'm listening to colleges and I'm really liking about Bard. That was the only, I'd never heard of it. It was my introduction to Bard. And I decided that day, that sounds like it's for me. Can you imagine the twist of fate that is? Cutting,
It's
cutting
highly
class,
unlikely.
cutting class to find your college. Anyway, when I arrived at Bard, I was in heaven. I had my guitar and met other musicians, and we formed little bands here and there, just trying stuff out. And we auditioned for the Night Owl in the Village for Field Period, and then the following summer we got the job. The Love and Spoonful was the headliner. They needed an opener. Oh, they had an opener, Tim Hardin. I don't know if you remember him. And then they had the Blues Project, and they had Richie Havens,
Oh wow.
and it was, and so they alternated openers 2 weeks at a time,
Hmm.
and we got a 2 week slot opening for the Spoonful, and then for Steve Stills had a band that had no name. Everyone just called it Steve Stills Band, but it was a bunch of pickup musicians, a
Hmm.
really good bass player, who then had to go to Cleveland for some reason. So I had to fill in on bass with him for a while, and that was a real learning experience because Steve Stills used to do just stuff that he decided at the time. There were no rehearsals. You didn't learn songs or anything. You just got out. You got your act together and played. And
Wait, he
one
would
night
just improvise. He would improvise songs,
he would
or
say, "We're going to do this. It's in G." And or this is a standard 12 bar blues in E, but I bend it a little so it's 14 bars, and
hmm.
that's it. But he liked to rehearse, but there just wasn't time. Like for example, Van Morrison came to town, and Gloria was just becoming a hit, and he didn't have any band, so he asked Steve Stills' band to play, and the bass player was still gone, so I sat in on that. I mean, how hard is it to play Gloria, right? Boom, boom, boom. Uh, so that was a steam bath of an experience working with all those musicians. And then we got off. My band, the Gingerman, got offered a contract, but the head of the company turned it down. But I went back to them to try to get it, and they signed me as a solo artist because I was the one writing the songs anyway. So they said, all right, well, so I got a recording contract with MGM, which my parents had to sign because I don't think I think I was just 18, and I needed some musicians. So that my two friends at Bard, Walter Becker and Donald Fagan, were excited about the idea of going into a real recording studio. They'd never been in one, so we rehearsed 6 songs and went in and recorded all of them in one day. By the way, here's a jazz note. I asked around Jerry Ragavoy, who owned the studio. I asked around for a really good drummer, and he said, "Yeah, uh, Herb Lavelle." And Herb Lavelle, I didn't know it, had played on all of Walter and Donald's favorite jazz albums. He was
Oh,
he was a drumming god. So when they walked into the studio, they came over to me and they said, "Is that Herb Lavelle?" And I said, "Yeah." And they went, "Oh my God. Yeah, and he's going to play our stuff?" Yeah. And they were like, Oh my God, this is so fabulous. So anyway, we cut that album. Um,
Which
we
album was that?
we cut the first six songs, changed a couple of them around. We added a Steely Dan song, one of the first ones, which was called Stone Pony.
Mm.
And they had just written that, and they'd written two other songs, Bus Driver is a Fruitcake and Trans Texas Airlines, which were outre Steely Dan songs in their infancy. And so we got to mixing that album, and the engineer at the studio left that studio. So I went to Regent Sound to mix it. But it's a whole different thing. When you've been listening to a record in one studio and you get into another one, it all sounds different. It sounds either thinner or bassier, or you have to redo it. But we only had 2 days to mix the whole album because the
Mm.
budgets then were much smaller. So I mixed it. The one you heard, Alias Boona, it was a disaster. I mean, the whole record should have been remixed because it actually sounded really great. But I was a terrible engineer, and the other engineer that was mixing was unfamiliar with the material
Right.
and how it sounded. So we brought up all the faders, and there were bass parts and guitar parts that were orphans that were supposed to be pulled down, and we had to scramble to get everything to sound even coherent. And then I turned in the record hoping they would say to me, "You need to go remix this because it sounds terrible." But
Wow.
they didn't. They put it out. And because there was a Dylan song on there that I rewrote,
Yeah.
they it got some attention. Got some nice reviews. Walter and Donald were a little embarrassed by it, I think. Although the musicianship I thought for 18-year-old kids, first time in the studio, I thought it was pretty good.
I did too.
Uh, so I moved to LA after I graduated, and I started working with Linda Ronstadt because my brother was her producer and manager. Um, Linda was ready to quit the record biz. I remember one night at the whiskey, somebody threw a on the rocks glass at her. It missed her head by an inch. She could feel it go by her ear, and she said, "That's it. I've had it. I'm
Wow.
going to Tucson. I'm going to work in my father's hardware store. I've had it with the record business." And my brother said, "If you stick around, I'll put together a backup band for you that will be killer and you'll enjoy singing again." And he put the band together. The band that he put together was the Eagles.
Mm.
Uh, it started with Henley and Fry, who were hanging out at the Troubadour, and so was I. And we were all singing at the Troubadour. Glenn Fry was in a band called Long Branch Penny Whistle, and we became friends. The other guy was John David Souther, who just died recently. God, they're all dropping. And so I started singing around town again and writing songs. And then I went to Walter and Donald and I said, "Listen, if I get another contract, will you play on my record?" Because they already had two hits out. They had at that point they had "Do It Again" and they were up to "Ricky Don't Lose That Number."
Wow.
In so they were on the they were on the third album, I think. Um, and they said, "Sure, absolutely." And I said, and they said, "It's another chance to redeem ourselves as a trio." And because my brother had put the Eagles together, I got them to sing on the record. And so I went to Geffen, and he said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. I called you." It was another enormous coincidence. He said, "I had Chuck Plotkin call you. What happened?" And then you just showed up. And I said, "No, I was going by Asylum and I decided to cold call you." And he said, "Oh, we were going to sign you because we heard you at the club the other night." So I went, "Oh my God." Uh, so suddenly I was on a label that was the hottest label in the country. I mean, they had Joni Mitchell and Little Ronstadt and Jackson Brown and Warren Zevon and stuff. So for that album, I corrected my earlier mistakes and I got a good studio with two great engineers and I rehearsed the musicians and I got the best. I got Dean Parks and Jim Gordon from At that time, he was playing with Leon Russell and Mad Dogs and Englishmen. Dean Parks had played on most of the Steely Dan records. Jeff Beccaro, Ben Benet, Larry Carlton, Chuck Rainey on bass, and Bob Glaub on bass. The cream of the LA musicians are on those second and third albums. That's why I think it's more representative. And
So the second and
I
third
got,
was the
I
second
got,
one was a self-titled, right?
yeah, Terence
And
Boylan,
then the third one is called what?
Susie.
Susie?
Hmm.
Okay.
And the fourth one was called Your Trout is in the Mail, but my contract was sold to MCA, and Ron Alexenberg then dropped out of the MCA deal because they fired him and he moved over to the Bertelsmann Group. I think don't we have to put a caveat on that because I'm not sure that that's official.
Hmm.
Anyway, maybe you could bleep it out or something. So I went on tour. I went on a 50 city tour, opening for at various times Bonnie Raitt, Little Feat, the Kate Brothers, and then in Houston we all came together for the New Year's concert, and it sold out. So it was me and Bonnie Raitt and Little Feat,
Wow.
and it was the first time I ever played in front of 40,000 people. I think that's what the Houston Coliseum holds, and it was standing room only for New Year's, and you couldn't hear anything, and it was a real experience. As soon as you came out on stage, the the sound of the blowback from the audience, the applause, was deafening. Your ears were ringing for the count off. I don't know how people do that night after night. They may
Wow.
they I think people like Springsteen and stuff must have gotten a setup where they had partial hearing blocks and partial hearing microphones or something because it's almost impossible to hear the band if they're making a lot of noise in the audience and you yell out the count off like you know, with your mouth because nobody can hear you anyway. Then
I didn't know
along,
about that phenomenon, and that's wild. The audience is louder than the band.
it feels that way when you're up there because all the noise of applause and chatter and everything is coming past you and bouncing off the back wall.
Right.
So the big cavernous echo in a
Yeah.
place. We played Austin, Dallas, Houston, Atlanta, St. Louis, Chicago. Chicago was easy compared to Houston. And then we did smaller clubs, smaller halls, like 500, 600, 1,000. We did a couple of bars in Austin those were great gigs, and Bonnie was loved, because people just got really into her bluesy playing. She was awesome.
Hmm.
And Little Feat had played on my record, so Bill Payne and I remember once Lowell George and I went to breakfast in the Marriott or whatever. Lowell George was the head of Little Feat, and for breakfast he ordered a bottle of champagne and a carton of Marlboros. Never seen a breakfast order like that before. So then Asylum sat on my first album for 3 or 4 months. They weren't sure what to do with it because they thought they'd signed a folk artist, and this was Steely Danish, Eagle-ish rock.
Right.
And two of the promo guys at Asylum said, "I hear two hits on this record. Let's get on it." When they put it out, by some miracle, and I think this is largely due to Bert Stein, who was head of promotion for Warner Brothers, who was promoting the record. When they put it out, Bert, I think, pulled home some favors and it started to catch on. And within 2 weeks, Billboard reported that it was the most added album at radio in the country. It was number one national breakout, and the record company was so chagrined. They had no records in the stores, and the Columbia pressing plant, who they borrowed whenever they had an over order, was on strike. The record plant in Palo Alto. Or San Francisco. Yeah, it's outside San Francisco, Burlingame, I think. And they couldn't get any records pressed there. They couldn't only get a few on the East Coast. So we missed this giant opportunity. I'm all over the radio in every, even in KLOL and and all the big stations are playing it in heavy rotation,
Mm,
and no records in the stores, which is a nightmare for a record company.
yeah.
And so they came to me and they said,
What song was getting played, or what songs?
"Well, Shake It and Don't Hang Up Those Dancing Shoes were being treated alternately as heavy rotation cuts off the album, and then the company scrambled to release Don't Hang Up Those Dancing Shoes as a single because Ian Matthews of Matthews Southern Comfort had covered Shake It, and it was number 4 on the Billboard charts as a single. So
Mhm.
they said, let's take your other hit single and push that. And you, meanwhile, get ready to do another album, and this time we'll be ready. But as everybody knows, this time isn't always going to be a repeat of last time. So that was very frustrating. And so Bruce Lundvall of CBS Records came to me and he said, "You had everything that an album really needs. That first album of yours, great songs, heavy radio play. They dropped the ball. They totally had their pants down.
Mm.
Leave them. Come over to Columbia." And we will do right by you. Your next album, we'll promote the hell out of it because I think you're going to be a star, blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
So, and at that time, the Born to Run album was climbing the charts.
Oh,
Springsteen was on Columbia, and to introduce me, Bruce Lundvall took me to the Roxy to see the opening of the Born to Run tour. And I sat down at the Columbia table, and who's there? Bob Dylan and Bonnie Raitt.
oh,
She had, and so we watched the Springsteen show together, and that was kind of cool. And so I went to Asylum and I said, I've been offered. They'll buy the contract. They'll buy it for 250,000, which was a lot. And they said no. They said you got a 3 album deal here, and we know your next album's going to do it, and we're going to be ready to promote it. So stick with us. And I did, sadly. I should have gotten lawyers and gotten out of that and gone to Columbia because they didn't. David Geffen left Asylum, and Joe Smith took over. Joe didn't sign me. He didn't know much about me. He just said, "I'm told that we can expect another great album from you," and I'm out there trying to write songs and get the album out so that I can capitalize on whatever momentum we had.
hmm,
And that's when I realized that the record business is just a total matter of chances. I mean, it already was finding a ukulele, meeting Dylan, getting to sing at the Newport Folk Festival, having Geffen sign me, and having all those great players play on it. It was all a string of chances. So you can go just as wrong as you can go right, a string of terrible mistakes. And that's where I sort of said, you know what? I'm just going to be a songwriter. I don't have to go on tour. I'll write songs for movies or soundtracks or whatever, or I'll compose music. And when Geffen had first signed me, there was a farmhouse near Bard that I loved. You've passed it many, many times. It's on River Road. It's on one of the old estates. And I always loved it. And so when he signed me and I saw more zeros on a check than I'd ever seen, I came back here, got the farmhouse, and decided to sort of retire from the music business and just write.
mm,
After shoving songs into a drawer for about 15 years, I dug them all out, revamped my studio to be the latest in Pro Tools with all the best things, and I'm in there now recording all that backlog of material.
get
That
out of here.
that brings us up to the present.
Wow. Oh,
Except, yeah, go ahead.
so I feel like, so I think you covered in depth the self-titled album, but then Susie was like two projects, right, that were sort of combined.
Exactly.
What was the story there?
Good. You did your homework. Yeah. So while I was waiting for the first album to come out and get going, I went into the studio with a bunch of musicians to make a sort of a parody record called Volcano Underpants, which was going to be the most outre out there. It combined elements of Nick Lowe and Elvis Costello, and Joe Jackson was a neighbor, and you remember him? Are you really going
I
out?
like Joe Jackson a lot, actually, and I like that song. I happen to like that song a lot too.
Right, and Stepping Out was good too.
Stepping
I mean,
out.
he was
Yeah.
playing with the same people I was playing with, the Murata brothers over in Woodstock, and Tony Levin, who was Paul Simon's bass player.
Oh yeah, Tony Levin. Yeah.
Yeah, Tony Levin, great bass player, and
Yeah.
see, there was starting to be a music scene around Rhinebeck and around Woodstock and stuff that was, well, I mean, there had been in Woodstock because of Dylan and the band, and I knew most of the members of the band. We'd actually worked together on a project, so I started to get some things going here, and we made this parody album, the which they then changed the name of from Volcano Underpants to Your Trout is in the Mail, which I threw out on the record label said, "What's the next record?" Because we want to start promoting it, and I said, "Your trout is in the mail," meaning you get this record when it's ready, you know. And then along came the song Susie, and the promo department said, "Let's just name it Susie because I think that could be a blah blah blah." And uh, then the record company said, "Could you give us an album more like the first one, which we now know how to market and promote?" And I went in and cut a second album, and at the last minute, it was decided to merge them. One side would be the sort of punk rock garage band with songs like 50 an Hour on the Vinyl Decliner and Shake Your Fiorucci, and which was a complete send up of both Elvis Costello's attitude, you know, um, and a little. There was a couple of parodies of some really terrible rock bands that we took off because they were a little bit too direct. One of them was a
Hmm.
wicked parody of My Sharona, and so they merged that together again, which then became another marketing issue. Which radio stations are going to play it? The progressive punk rocks are going to play the out there stuff, and the mainstream are going to play the more harmonic singer-songwriter stuff.
Hmm.
So that made noise for a little bit of a reason there, but I was already deep into being in Rhinebeck and just writing songs. They put that record out. I did a short tour. I think we did the East Coast and the West Coast, and that was it. The first album sold a little under 500,000 records. The second album sold about 260,000, if that. I don't know whether their reports were accurate,
Mm.
but I wanted to do other things. And I wanted to get into a studio that I owned so that I could try out stuff. And I wanted to find local musicians who were interested in pushing the envelope a little bit from where we had been on both those albums. I wanted to make a third album that was really interesting. The rule in the recording studio was unless someone's willing to crowbar open the trunk of your car to get this record, we're not putting it out. And of course, it takes years and years to get an album that good. Right? We
Hmm.
were we were dreaming, but that was the goal.
So, so of the commercial release albums that are your projects, those are the three, right?
No, in 1967, my brother and I were locked in our New York apartment, and he had injured his foot, and I had a cold, and we decided to write some songs together. And since we were both drama major or acting majors at Bard and theater majors, I said, "What if we did little comic skits and then a song and then another little comic skit. And we took that to MGM because I already had a contract with them. And they said, well, let's go in and try it out. So we had our first skits together. We called it Apple Tree Theater for a couple of reasons. But Pete Spargo at MGM Verve, which was their more jazz hip label, said, we're going to put this on Verve Forecast, which is our forward progressive label at MGM. Mm-hmm. And it came out and it was a hit. Time magazine wrote it up. John Lennon, in an interview with Disc magazine, said it was his favorite new record. And I think even George Harrison liked it because it had some great guitar players on it and a couple of classical musicians. First violinist for the New York Philharmonic, the cello player for the New York Philharmonic. That was my brother's influence, but he was a big jazz. And I mean, it had Larry Coryell on guitar solos. Nobody was using Larry Coryell on rock music, but he was a great rock player.
Yep.
And
well,
so
Steely Dan, didn't Steely Dan use him on a couple of records?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Larry Coryell or?
Larry Coryell.
Yeah, I think so. They're Hawkins and Dean Parks and Larry Carlton, you may be thinking of.
Maybe it's Larry Carlton. He's the one who.
They use Larry Carlton quite a bit.
Yeah, he's the 335 guy.
Right.
Carlton. Yeah.
Carlton and Chuck Rainey was Walter Worship Rainey. Yeah. I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for saying this, but Chuck Rainey was the wrong player for my stuff because I was looking more for a solid rhythm bass, kick drum, bass drum foundation to build more open, spacey stuff on top of. Which, if you listen to Steely Dan, listen to Asia. That's a classic example of where I thought the music was going. I mean, Asia is a cut. Asia and Dr. Wu are my favorite Steely Dan songs. And there's an openness there that invites playing a little that's perfect instead of I mean, when I hear on the radio I just start to go, this is approaching noise, and I can't even hear what the keyboard guy is playing, and it's just all mess. But those are gems of musicianship, and chord structure of Asia is really cool.
What's the name of the record that you made with your brother?
Apple Tree Theater playback.
Do you have a website for your music stuff?
Yeah, it's being revamped right now. Somebody just went to it and said this website is so outdated. It's terenceboylan.com.
Okay. Because that's one of the things we also like to put the word out in general so that people can, before the show comes out, I have to warn you, I'm the worst. I get things in the can, but it takes me forever to release things.
Right. Me too.
But then the positive side of that is that I get plenty of lead time to promote you in general. So that's also helpful. But cool. So that's so there's the 4 records of yours, and then you've been writing. So you wrote for TV or movies or in composition,
right?
And what kind of stuff was that?
It started with found money when the movie Little Darlings with Chrissy McNichol and Tatum O'Neal, I think, came out, and they wanted a song to open the movie, and they used one of mine, and they pay a lot of money. If it's the song that's under the credits and it's starting the movie, you get one different rate than if it's used incidentally during the movie, and that was a big surprise to me. So I started pitching songs. I wrote, they've used my music in Girls and The Sopranos and going all the way back to the early Police shows like Matlock and stuff like that. They would use it incidentally. They used one of my songs in Sopranos in the steam bath, And because they're in a big argument, you can hardly tell it, but they still pay so well. You would really have to know the song to know that that's what was playing in the steam bath. But they're yelling at each other, so who cares? And they're paying me all this money to use a bit of a song. So I've started focusing on that. That's a living in itself.
Your songs from your records in those, or did you write special songs for
I
those?
wrote special songs if it was a feature film. Um, the the trick of using hit songs uh, was they do that. That falls into place by itself. So "Shake It" was used in two or three movies, I think, and I know that. Well, it started back with Midnight Cowboy. Jer Jerome Hellman, director of Midnight Cowboy, with Dustin Hoffman and
Mm-hmm.
John Voight,
Mm-hmm.
used a song of mine called "Bring the Whole Family." And again, it's hard to find in the movie, but uh, that was like an eye opener too. Like if I could get my music in front of film directors, it's just more money from the same pipeline because they've already been written and recorded. But then they started saying, "Could you write another one?" Kevin Costner film called American Flyer. They
Mm-hmm.
had me write a song called "Roll of the Dice, Roll of the Wheel," which I wrote in one night and turned it in, and they said, "This is perfect." I was so proud of that. I could actually do this. I can write to order, um, which I often wonder. Do you ever wonder about when composers, like, say, with American President, with Michael Douglas and Annette Bening, right? Uh, ba-da-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da, brilliant theme. But whether they think they can, under pressure, come up with a theme that the director will like, that suits the movie, that they're not embarrassed to have been so schmaltzy, that's a tall order. And whenever I hear that, I think, did he tremble as he said, "This is, I think, what should be the theme"? That they'd go, "Ew, that's really terrible." Uh, that's how I felt every time I pitched them a song, you know. They're going to say, "No, no, no, you missed the whole point." So when they say we love it, it's like, this is great.
I don't know what your opinion of John Williams is, but of course,
Love
he's probably the most famous for
it.
writing themes that are so iconic and become, inseparable from the actual movies.
Right. So John Barry,
What did he do?
Out of Africa, um, the Stanley Kubrick film, um, he did Tess, I think. He did, and then his disciple, uh, well, I won't say that because that would be probably insulting to his disciple, but he taught someone
Hmm.
who then wrote four or five of my favorite movie themes,
Oh,
um, and actually they're also stealable from that they you see them recycled. John Barry gets robbed from all the time.
hmm.
He'll come out with a movie and then three movies. I'll say that sounds like a John Barry soundtrack, but it isn't. But he's copied. John Williams was obviously copied a lot. Um,
Maybe composers like Tchaikovsky were the original movie composers because of the connection to opera and such and musicals and things like that. Sort of like,
exactly.
you know,
They were robbing from each other too, and
I'm
everybody.
sure they were.
I don't know if you know Borodin. There's the song "Stranger in Paradise."
No.
Take my hand, I'm a stranger in
Oh, I
paradise,
know that song. Yes, yeah,
all lost in a wonderland, right?
yeah.
The Russian opera from Borodin is the melody goes ba da da ba da 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 ba da 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 da. So it's the exact note for
It's
note.
so close. Yeah, it's
No, it's
basically it has
exactly
to be a ripoff. Yeah.
it's actually the same. Nobody even chose to hide it because I think it was in the public domain. So they didn't even, I don't, other than getting
Oh,
credit in the reviews saying they lifted a melody and it's a famous song.
mm-hmm.
don't know what the royalty situation was there, but that was going on all the time.
Yeah.
Procol Harum, White a Shade of Pale, you know the record, right?
Yes.
Bach,
Yes.
that piano part is,
That's the yes.
I think, is part of the foray from the fugue. Um, so yeah, people were lifting movie music, and I was trying to come up with themes. I wanted to find a theme that was just perfect for a movie and then submit it even though I hadn't been asked and have it be so good that they had to say, I can't get that out of my head. You know that As Time Goes By was not originally supposed to be in Casablanca? And the director, Michael Curtiz, thought the song was a turkey. So at the end of the movie, when he goes to edit, he said, now I got to find another song to replace that. And we'll have to reshoot that scene. And Ingrid Bergman said, you replace that song, you replace me.
Wow.
Brave.
It's it's that pairing is very iconic. I'm actually one of the few people who is not a fan of the song As Time Goes By, and I'm a huge jazz fan. There was a totally unrelated, but a tangent. There's a great show called, oh God, there was a great show with the female British actress who oh my lord, now I'm gonna blank on her name.
Give me a hint on the show, and I'm
I think it's called As Time Goes By, or at least they use the same song in there. It's a British sitcom.
old or new?
Old.
Relative old. Like
Uh,
60s, 70s, 80s, or
yeah, probably 70s, 80s. Judy Dench was in it. I think
uh-huh.
it's called As Time Goes By. I like that show a lot.
Okay. Now, yeah, but who else besides Judy Dench?
I don't remember the name of the. She's the famous one in the show. I don't remember the male actor, but it's a British sitcom. Uh, I think it is called As Time Goes By, and I think the theme song is As Time Goes By.
Cool.
So I told you that our show is we've become sort of de facto archivists for the Bard Music Department. So part of it is hearing the stories of folks like you, getting it on tape, and memorializing everything, and hopefully getting your story the way you want to tell it. So feel free to tell me something that you think we missed, but I do have a specific question because we're a music production podcast. We're actually into the music production process, songwriting. So you just talked a little bit about songwriting. I'm a songwriter as well, so I completely sympathize with what you're describing. I don't know if anything I've written is good or bad. I just write
No
because
one.
yeah,
No,
I've learned to just like strip away myself, a little enough of the self critique just to put stuff out. But I have no clue if it's good or bad.
did you ever notice that when you finish a song, right coming off of writing it, you think it's the best and you can't wait to play it for somebody who says, this is the best thing I ever wrote, and I really think it's genius. And then the confidence in it begins to wane a little. And by the time you actually perform it, you're apologizing for taking up their time, saying, I really hate to bother you with this, but would you listen to it, But at the time when you finish it, you are Mozart and Bach and you're a genius.
Right.
It drives me crazy.
Yes.
And it's hard to finish a song if you don't finish it before that confidence wanes. So I try to stay with the hot spot, while I still have a romance going with a song.
Yeah.
Get get it on tape in some fashion so that I can hear that initial fairy dust that the guys got on it, while it's in the birthing process. Because
Hmm.
if you let it sit around, I'm pulling songs out of drawers and shoe boxes and on the backs of receipts in my wallet and stuff. That as soon as I see it and I forgot that I wrote it, I say this is really good, and then I go back in and I'm almost finished with it, and I say, well, maybe it wasn't as good as I first thought it was. But it's that first thing you have to remember is the impression that somebody else who's never heard it is going to have. After you work on it for 4 days, naturally it's going to start to feel stale.
Mm.
I can't tell a songwriter enough. Stay with it. Stay with the confidence. Whatever the confidence you first had was, go with it all the way.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the the only song I wrote that sold 1 million copies, I wrote in 20 minutes, whereas Ice and Snow took me a week to write, and I was still writing some of the lines when I went in to do the vocal, and I was still adjusting things. And I love that song, but the ones that I dashed off seemed to be, catchier or something, or less worked over, or maybe it's just that the inspiration was so strong that it just all came out. Dylan said he doesn't feel like he wrote most of the songs that he's really known for, more like they wrote themselves through him, more like they were delivered to him. They came to him. He doesn't know from where. And in one conversation, though, I can tell you Dylan's whole operational motive or operational uh, mechanism was to write a song to another melody and then change the melody. So he would take an already existing song, write another song to it, and then figure out how to change it enough so nobody would notice. He didn't always, for example, how many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? Blowing in the wind. Okay, a song that he was doing in his set before that was No More Auction Block for Me. No more, no more. No more driving wheel for me. Many thousand gone. The answer, my friend, is but it's they're so close. Same with Don't Think Twice. Same with Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, which was a melody from uh, Lord Randall, my son. Uh, the melody for Don't Think Twice, he actually lifted from Paul Clayton, another folk singer, changed it around a little bit. Um, there's a number of melodies that he didn't even bother to change because they were traditional melodies, and he could just say he arranged and adapted it. But that actually makes songwriting a lot easier. Just it's already half there. Write the lyrics to another melody, then work on changing the melody till no one could recognize it. Try it.
I believe it or not, I have tried it in a sort of way where I tried it with. Actually, I think anything that gets you to write the song is okay. So any trick you want to play on yourself, any game you want to play is fine. I tried writing Taylor Swift songs by taking all of her lyrics and writing the opposite of what she said and changing it from major to minor.
Uh huh.
I've written a song like that.
Cool.
Luckily, I have a friend who's also a songwriter. We co-write, and so he'll start a song, and I'll steal one of his lines, and I'll steal his melody because I'll just credit him as co-writer, and then But it's I don't care. I mean, I'm almost 50 years old, so whatever gets the
Not
job
right.
done,
No, no,
whatever gets the
no.
job done is good.
I didn't know the Dylan trick of writing to another melody or even um, taking someone else's lyrics and writing into it, writing another melody or adapting it so that it's not recognizable, and then writing your own lyrics to the melody that you wrote to another song works just as well too. It's all fine with me.
Hmm.
Mine, uh, my inspiration always seemed to be a line would come into my head at the same time as a melody, and I'd quick write it down and I'd write the chords over it. So
Hmm.
like I'm on the Taconic Parkway and I'm singing, "Did she finally get to you?" And I thought, okay, that's going to be the song. That's the chorus of the song. Now I got to build everything around it.
Hmm.
That's on the second album on Asylum, so the third album.
Hmm.
And when I played it for Paul Harris, do you know who Paul Harris is?
Hmm.
Okay, so there's an unsung hero we should know, and he hung around at Bard quite a bit because he lived with me. He was with Steve Stills Manassas. He was with Crosby, Stills, and Nash as the piano player. he followed Steve Stills into his next band, which I think was the Young Stills band. Did you know that that even existed?
No,
Neil Young and Steve Stills. The
no.
one song they did was "Long May You Run."
Mm.
We've been through some things together, with trunks of memories still to come. And so they were tinkering with this song, and they said, "Let's just do it as us and put it out." And it was a hit. Very cool.
Wow.
Ronstadt, who doesn't do any of her own songs, she wrote part of one, was always looking for songwriters with good stuff, and she discovered a lot. I mean, she was early singing Jackson Browne, early singing J.D. Souther. She was the first record out on Desperado, I think, the Eagles song that's on their second album. She had a great ear for picking out songs, but she used to come to me and say, "Will you co-write a song with me so that I can finally say I wrote something? I'll tell you what I want to say, what's in my heart." And I said, "Sure." We
Mm-hmm.
worked on a lot of stuff, and we have fragments, but we never finished one.
Mm.
And one of us would be off on tour or whatever. But I admire the way she found songs that stuck in her head, and she said that I have to do that song.
Mm.
That's how she said it. She never said I want to. She said I have to do that song.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I think so. For a lot of people who are songwriters, they pick it up at a certain time, probably high school. But I feel like you were writing when you were really a kid, and so for any writer, getting into that childhood sort of childish sort of mind of excitement where you're not in your own way. Some people call it like flow state, things like that, is
Yeah.
very important. I started playing guitar when I was 12, but I didn't start writing until high school. So I play guitar is it feels
When in high
natural to
school?
me.
When in high school? 14, 15, 16?
I don't remember the first the first song I ever wrote was probably after Pearl Jam 10 came out. So I could only tell you what time when it was based on the fact that it had to be after that record came out.
There are those who would say
Pearl
that the
Jam
mark
10.
of a songwriter is that someone else wants to do their song. So it's almost like saying anybody can write a song, but if you write one good enough or interesting enough that someone else wants to record it, that's the badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
So when other people do your songs, it's kind of it kicks it up a notch,
Mm-hmm.
even if you hate the way they did it. Which I've had a couple of mine done where I go, "What were they thinking?" That's awful. Um,
So now you say you're doing a record. So actually, I don't want to take up your whole day. We've been on, I think, for about an hour. So I'd like to wrap it up. You said you are doing a record now.
all that backlog of stuff, I'm going to record it all, and I'm going to pick. Well, the paradigm is so changed. So let's just talk 30 seconds about that.
Yeah. Oh, I have
Nobody,
time. If you have time, I want to be
no,
respectful of your time.
nobody has a CD player anymore, let alone, and you can't hand somebody a thumb drive because, so everything. So I'm streaming on YouTube and Spotify and all of the main streaming things. YouTube is amazing. I haven't been able to stump them in the last couple of months. They've caught up that much to, I mean, ask YouTube for Ursel Hickey. You never can tell. Nobody knows that song. Local Boy Makes Good in Buffalo. He had a hit called Bluebirds Over the Mountain that nobody ever remembers. But I tried them on that. Boom, there it was. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't believe it. They have all my stuff. Spotify has everything. What
Does
are the
Apple
other?
Music have everything?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't know what the other big streamers is, but that whole paradigm is so changed that when this stuff comes out, a guy came to me named Lorenzo, and he said, you don't know how to get your music out there. I guarantee you. If you're not 22 like me, you don't know all the channels. So when you're ready, when you want to put this stuff out and start it being streaming and completely revamp your website, I'm there
Hmm.
for you. So that's where I'm going to deliver it, basically.
Hmm.
Just
Yeah.
know what this is. Because you don't really put out records anymore. You don't put out, it just
Yeah.
goes out into the world on various things. I think everybody should at least go back. It's very popular to go back to vinyl. A lot of people are buying turntables and putting on vinyl. I think that there should be a resurgence of CD players in cars. My Volvo has the best sound system I've ever heard in a room or anywhere. It's a 14 speaker Harman Kardon. I hear things in that system that I never heard in records, even in my own. I mean, it's a phenomenal system. So if they put CD jukeboxes in all the cars somewhere in the back next to the spare tire, and you could just dial up on the C12 or whatever, that would be brilliant.
Hmm.
Because then people would start sharing music again. You can't
Hmm.
share streaming except
Well,
people in the room.
you can share it by texting or emailing somebody a
Right.
link to it.
You're right.
If you use when I
You're
release,
listening to it on an iPhone.
yeah, which is not optimal, and also it's not well. Some
That's
some
the
services
understatement of the year. You just, which is not optimal.
some services have use lossless audio. You can actually
I
so
do.
Apple Music, I think Spotify too has lossless
I
versions.
I do. I come out of a either a Chrome device that has lossless
Yeah,
or WAV files
yeah,
out of the thing, and I plug in the Sony 8-inch into a full powered.
yeah. When I release music, I use a distributor called CD Baby,
Uh-huh.
and you just basically load. They actually walk you through it. It's like a fill. It's an online form, and you just fill out each step all along the way.
I used CD Baby back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they first came out, we did a CD with them. We did two actually. Um, and then I sold through Amazon, you know,
Do you have the rights to all your music, or do the record companies still have that
I
stuff?
signed a contract that I can release everything that was on Warner Brothers or Rhino. You know Rhino, right? Big really
Rhino, yeah.
Rhino, right? I have a lot of stuff on Rhino.
The
So
original Rhino store was in Ulster County, no? I think. Wasn't there
really,
a store? Rhino Records, the record company, had a store, and I think there was only one of them. I may be speaking out of term, but there was only one of them, and I'm fairly certain it was like somewhere on nine, somewhere up in.
I heard that too.
Yeah, and I went there one time, Rhino Records, and I bought a record. I bought a Herbie Hancock CD,
Yeah, I know what that is. I don't know if that was
or if it's not the same company, I don't
affiliated
know.
with the Rhino label, but I remember Rhino Records, huh?
Yeah,
The store.
yeah.
So at Bard, by the way, here's another definitely worth 30 seconds. There were, besides Walter and Donald and the thing, Tony Mulcahy was a pretty decent jazz piano player. Chevy Chase was, he knew three or four Bill Evans songs, so he thought of himself as a jazz player. He was, I think, primarily a drummer. Walter and Donald
Chevy
needed,
Chase, the comedic actor,
yeah, yeah, he was in our,
also played music.
yeah, he was in three bands at Bard. Walter and Donald did a pickup band because they got hired to play the spring prom at Blythewood. So they needed a drummer and a bass player. They got Chevy on drums and another bass player who then had to go to Vermont for some reason. So I had to fill in. I seemed to be filling in on bass. And then Chevy had a band called Leather Canary, and then he played in a pickup band at the Magdalene. You missed the Magdalene, but it was across from the campus just before you cross into Columbia County,
Hmm.
near Tivoli or whatever.
Hmm.
That was a night spot, and all the faculty went there too, and they always had a band. But then in the music department, for example, we had Jake Druckman. famous composer.
No.
Now we have Joan Tower, but we had Jake Druckman is now at Yale, if he's still among the warm, and he was a great guy. He got me through Schoenberg, Hindemith, and retrograde inversions. I mean, that was a tough course. Without without Jake, I would have never been there. We had some early, we had some jazz writers. I think one of them is still there, who were also musicians. There were kids like John Jacobs and Art Carlson had a band called Big Noise in the 70s that was,
Hmm.
uh, I'd say they were definitely ahead of their time. Um, John Jacobs is an amazing blues player. So when I got to Bard, oh, and by the way, Dylan was living in Woodstock at that time at his manager Albert Grossman's house,
Hmm.
Strebel Road. So when you get bored with Woodstock, you come over to Bard to, I think he was there to pick up girls, but he liked going to Adolph's, but very often they wouldn't get there till Adolph almost called last call. So a couple of times when Dylan came over, and he said, where else is there to go? And I'd say my room, where I have an icebox and beer and wine. And so a couple of times he got just hammered enough to sleep under my bed. He didn't like sleeping on top of it, but and then he'd wake up in his clothes and be ready to go. It amazed me that Dylan could drink. One night I only had sweet vermouth. So he drank sweet vermouth on the rocks until 2 in the morning, and then wrote that song, If You Gotta Go, Go Now, or Else You Gotta Stay All Night. He wrote that in Potter A. You know the Dorm Potter, right?
Potter.
Potter in Stone Row.
Yeah.
That was the room he wrote that song in
I
because,
may have lived in Potter.
oh, yeah.
I lived in one of the
Everybody
stone
lived in
rows.
Potter. Everybody lived in Potter at one time or another. So Dylan was there, and the guy across the hall from me, Jim Fine, said, "All I've got is sweet vermouth." I said, "Bring it over." We got. So this girl had to leave at 10 because there was a curfew, right? So she stayed until 12 when she knew the guy at Tewksbury was going to go off duty for a half an hour, right, to get his lunch hour. And that's when Dylan wrote, "If you got to go, go now, or else you got to stay all night." Because she said, "I have to go, or else I have to stay here all night." And he just said, "Well, there's your song right there." So how anybody could get mildly loaded on sweet vermouth and wake up the next morning and be ready to go. He was already smoking a cigarette and playing the guitar. You know, that's something that I need to, come about, as they say. I need to get there. He had endless energy, endless.
Yeah.
Why he was jiggling all the time. He never stopped moving. If he was talking to you, both his knees were wiggling.
Yeah. Yep.
And uh, I thought Timothy Chalamet did a few interesting takes on him in that. We don't
I
know.
I mean I'm not I didn't know him personally, so I thought it was amazing. The movie.
Except the biggest joke is nobody would ever let Dylan go. He was the worst motorcycle driver. He was the worst driver. Nobody wanted to get in a car with him driving because, first of all, he would put his glasses on and you'd look through the glasses and they would be absolutely filthy. And he couldn't, he's like Mr. Magoo. But in that scene where Chalamet hops on his motorcycle to drive to Newport, that didn't happen. And then Susie Rotolo jumps on the back of it, like "Let's go." Yeah, no, that's a
Never.
that's a 4 out of 5. No, and then other people, if Dylan said I'll drive, everybody's, "Oh, no, 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 I got it covered." So that's when he came to Adolph's. He either had Bobby Newirth or Victor Mahmoudis or Dave Boyd, who's three roadies, would bring him. So there was a scene at Bard. I'm wrapping it up. There was a scene at Bard. It was musicians. We had a folk club called the Red Balloon, which then became a jazz club combo.
Mm.
Played there 100 times. Jazz trios played there. Herbie Hancock played there once when he came. He played in the old gym, and the manager of the Red Balloon, the coffee house on campus, said, "Would you do a set over at the Red Balloon? It'll help us get things going." That was great. Blythe Danner, the actress,
Yeah.
singer, and she used to do. She could be convinced to stand up and do like uh, scat singing, improvisation. She always did like these are a few of my favorite things. Was the best version I ever heard of it. Waltz for Debbie, Bill Evans thing.
Hmm.
She also could. She could go out there with vocal things uh, that I hadn't heard anybody doing yet. She was inventing a kind of a style. She got nodes on her throat. Great actress, by the way. I
Yeah.
watched her in a lot of plays at Bard. I did the lights for two of her plays. You know what happens then? You see all the rehearsals, all the dress rehearsals, and all the performances. And I watched her evolve a character and develop someone to my astonishment. By closing night, it was miles from the first rehearsal, and it was brilliant.
Yeah. Pretty lucky.
I loved Blythe. She was terrific. She is terrific.
Hmm.
So to be continued. You check out Greatest Music Ever, London based. Uh,
Yes.
look at some of the people he's invited who have said yes.
Yes. Yeah,
And
I will check him. That's impressive.
yeah, it is. I think he's like 24 or 5.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, this is a podcasting is a young man's game.
yeah, you're young.
I'm
You're,
a I'm
you're
a
a
you know
mere
late
babe in the
I'm a
woods.
late comer.
You're a mere babe in the woods.
Yeah.
So edit out anything I said that's illegal, and it's
Sure.
a
Yeah,
pleasure
thank you.
meeting you.
Yeah, so I'll be I'll promote your stuff and I'll get your name out there and if you ever want to well actually if you want to come back on the show when you're promoting your next record,
Great.
then do
Uh,
it
I'd
because we want to and let us know, stay in touch, keep us on your mailing list if you have one.
love to. Okay.
If there's anything going
And I'll
on.
send
But you
you a
live
link
near
I'll send you a link to the updated website. Although
Yeah,
you found
please
the
do.
old one, right? Oh no,
Well,
you
the old
did.
one
TerenceBoylan.com still up.
is easy enough to find. So whenever they put the new one up, it'll be the same URL, I
Right,
presume.
exactly.
Of
Right,
course. So that's the only one people need.
right. Okay.
Yeah, so we want to know, I want to know, new record, anything, whenever you're doing anything musically,
Great.
keep us, in the loop.
Okay, I
You
will.
live near Bard still?
Hmm.
Oh, okay. So, okay. I live in Brooklyn, but I'm moving upstate, but I'm still going to be somewhat far. I'm going to be in near Saratoga
Ah,
fairly soon. So,
yeah,
but I think I'll be.
my niece sort of commutes between Brooklyn and upstate New York and likes it.
Mhm.
Um, she's got a job in the city, but now it's, most people are a 4-day work week. It's kind of
Yeah.
country houses get more and more important. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a country seat.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, no, it's a pleasure meeting you, and
Same.
I will keep you posted.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Thanks for being on the show. Really
Okay,
loved it.
thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Terrence.
Okay, bye.
Take care.